The NBA just released a new rule regarding how fouls will now be handled within the league for the 2021-2022 season. Essentially, the rule states that an offensive player will no longer get a foul shot if they jump into a defensive player at an abnormal angle. Several players have all had different reactions to this rule shift. Stick around to learn more about this rule and how players feel about it. The new rule. As stated in the official NBA Twitter, the new rule is for the 2021-22 NBA season. There will be an interpretive change in the officiating of overt, abrupt, or abnormal non-basketball moves by offensive players with the ball in an effort to draw fouls. The following points of education video showcase areas where a change was needed before releasing a series of tweets depicting different times where a foul would, with the new rules, have been called. Essentially, the new rule simply means that an offensive player can no longer do anything considered abnormal to a defending player in an attempt to get a foul. Stephen Curry's reaction. Steph Curry was directly affected by the new rule change after a preseason play of his against the Trailblazers. The star basketball player was on the perimeter of the court facing off against Trailblazers forward Nasir Little. Curry had the ball and appeared to get into position to shoot a three-pointer, but instead jumped forwards and into Little to try to draw a foul. With the new rule in place, however, this wasn't granted. Steph Curry said that he loved the effort, however, and also said that the new rules will help keep the basketball game pure. Steve Kerr's reaction. Another notable figure to have spoken on the new rules change is the Golden State coach, Steve Kerr. Kerr said that this rule change is what all NBA coaches have been wanting. Kerr said as long as the refs follow through on what the league says they will do, and I'm confident they will, we'll get away from players manipulating refs and back to basketball. He also said that the new rules change will allow for defensive players and those on guard will now have the ability to actually perform their jobs without the interruption of other players who are fishing for foul shots. James Harden's reaction. James Harden was another notable person to share his opinion on the rules. Nets coach Steve Nash has called Harden the poster boy for the new rules on fouls, a statement which Harden has agreed with. Harden, however, believes he shouldn't have to change up his game too much with the new rule set. The player said, "Sometimes I feel like coming into a game, it's already predetermined. I already have the stigma of getting foul calls." According to Harden, he simply wishes for refs to call what they see, whether that be a foul or something else. Trae Young's reaction. With the onset, the league is currently undergoing a transitionary period where both players and refs are adjusting to the new rules. Trae Young, however, believes that refs are avoiding calling fouls out on certain players. Young said, on the new rules, they're definitely holding onto their whistles a lot more than they would in previous years. A lot of my fouls, I'm driving, and I'm smaller than a lot of guys, so they're knocking me off balance and knocking me off track, so that's a foul. Young agrees with the new rule change, but simply hopes that refs will remain within the rules, calling fouls appropriately. Mike Budzenholzer and the Milwaukee Bucks. Mike Budzenholzer, the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, has shown his approval for the rules change. Although the Bucks don't really have any players who took advantage of the previous rule set by actively seeking out foul shots, Budzenholzer says he feels that the new rules change will affect everyone, if only to varying degrees. He feels that this will help the team to put even more emphasis on defense. The coach also says that NBA fans and players will both have to ultimately wait and see what the true impact of this rule change will be and how exactly it will be implemented and how it will ultimately affect how games are played. Draymond Green's reaction. Draymond Green, a player on the Golden State Warriors, has shown a lot of approval for the rule change. Although other players have shown a bit of resistance, Green has said that watching the games without as many foul calls is far more satisfying as a fan. Green said that, before the rule change, he couldn't actually watch an NBA game and enjoy it, but has since returned to being a fan as illegal moves are being cracked down on. Overall, Green said, "Kudos to the league and our referees. It's been great basketball to watch, and it's better for our game." So far, we've covered what exactly the rule change has been, as well as how different players and coaches have reacted to it. Reactions have been mixed overall, with more defensive players applauding the decision, while more traditionally offensive players have disapproved of the rules change. But what exactly counts as illegal moves in the new rule set? What can fans expect in future games? Stick around to learn more about the new rules on fouls and some of the most notable fouls throughout NBA history. What counts as an illegal move? Monty McCutcheon, the vice president of the NBA's referee development and training, has said that the ultimate goal of the rule change is to encourage more good plays. Some of the more specific things that the new rule cracks down on include shooters launching into a defender or leaning against a defender at a strange angle, offensive players veering off path to collide with a defensive player, an offensive player extending any part of his body to hit a defensive player, like a leg kick, and an offensive player extending his arm out to connect with a defensive player. Although there are certainly more moves affected by the rule change, these were specifically showcased by the NBA in their tweet announcing the rules change. Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen. So what can fans expect with the new change to fouls? To get a better idea, we should look back on some fouls in NBA history. One of the more notable fouls was an event between the Bad Boy Pistons and the Chicago Bulls, specifically between players Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen. In 1991, the Pistons were in a bad place and were gradually losing their dominance. They had previously beat the Bulls over the last 3 seasons. During a game between the two teams, Pippen was was setting up a shot. Rodman, however, shoved Pippen, sending the player into the stands. The Bulls won the game, however, and ultimately contributed to the overall downfall of the Pistons. Charles Barkley and HAKEEM OLAJUWA. Another hard foul in NBA history was Barkley's hit to the gut of OLAJUWA as the latter attempted to make a shot. Barkley is known as a lovable analyst for NBA games to most modern viewers of the sport, but he has had a controversial past in the league. During a 1994 game between the Phoenix Suns and the Houston Rockets, OLAJUWA was running towards the rim to go for a dunk. During the game, OLAJUWA had been steadily increasing the Rockets' score. Barkley, however, had different plans. As OLAJUWA jumped and went to dunk the ball, Barkley threw a fist into the scorer's gut. SHAQ and RODNEY STUCKEY. The other fouls we've covered have been dirty, aggressive plays between players, but not all notable fouls throughout the NBA have been such dirty plays. RODNEY STUCKEY's team, the Detroit Pistons, were facing SHAQ's Phoenix Suns. Stuckey had the ball and ran up, going for a dunk. SHAQ, however, intercepted the smaller player by jumping up and smacking down. SHAQ, however, accidentally ended up slamming Stuckey into the ground. RAMBIS gets clotheslined. Another one of the most infamous fouls in NBA history is the incident between RAMBIS, a player for the Los Angeles Lakers, and Kevin McHale, a player on the Boston Celtics. RAMBIS was running towards the goal and had been rapidly scoring points throughout the course of the game. As RAMBIS went for a dunk, however, McHale ran up on the Lakers player and hit him with a clothesline, knocking him to the ground and preventing him from scoring. Although the foul was controversial at the time, and still is, it ultimately helped the Celtics win the game, reinforcing the idea that sometimes foul baiting is a useful tactic. P.J. Brown and Charlie Ward. Despite the nature of some of these fouls, in general, they are harmless incidents. They don't generally result in any suspensions, layoffs, or escalation, but this is only a generalization. One of the few fouls that have resulted in layoffs and suspensions is the time P.J. Brown of the Miami Heat flipped the New York Knicks guard Charlie Ward over his head. Brown then body slammed his opponent. This led to a huge fight that cleared out the basketball stands and ended with players on both teams getting suspended. What can fans expect in the future? In the past, as we've covered, fouls in the NBA tended to be harder and more violent. Players would go to extreme lengths to prevent the opposite team from scoring points, and in certain instances, this could lead to fights during the game. Players and coaches have argued that such fouls detract from the purity and overall sportsmanship of the league. Going forward, fouls will of course still happen, but smaller incidents will certainly dissipate. Perhaps players will find a workaround to still score foul shots, but ultimately, we can only wait and see. So there you go, the new NBA foul rule. With this new rule, players can't intentionally bait out foul shots, which is a huge difference from the more intentional, rougher, harder fouls that have occurred in games of the past. Players and coaches have had mixed reactions on the decision, with some believing it will improve the purity of the sport, while others argue it detracts from it. But what do you think? Do you agree with the rule change, or do you think they should remain the same? Leave your comments down below, and thank you for watching.